One of the main objections that I often hear to the law of attraction is that it is toxic, because it suggests that everything you experience in your life is something that you've attracted, and so anything bad you experience is your fault. Now, I am someone who believes in the law of attraction. I do believe that we can use our consciousness to influence our reality. However, I do recognise that this can be a really detrimental idea when it's taken too far. However, I do think this objection stems from a very extreme interpretation of the law of attraction. So in this video, I want to explain how I think it's possible that we can influence our reality through manifestation, whilst also acknowledging that not everything we experience in our lives is our fault. Hi everyone, my name's Georgia. I'm currently studying a master's degree in consciousness, spirituality and transpersonal psychology, and in my free time I love to study manifestation. Now, I was first drawn to the idea of the law of attraction because I loved how empowering it was. I loved the idea that we had the ability to influence and shift our own reality simply using our minds. Unlike when it comes to physical circumstances such as money, we all have our minds or consciousness. So if the law of attraction is real, then it means all of us have this innate ability in us to be able to at least exert some influence over our physical reality. And so that's something I've always loved about the idea of manifestation and found to be extremely empowering. But of course, with this idea that we can use our minds to affect reality, of course comes the negative consequence that not only can we use our mind to attract good things, but we can also use our mind to attract bad things. And this is where a lot of these objections stem from. People take issue with this because they believe it can lead to, firstly, self-blame. So it can be very detrimental mentally if you are experiencing bad circumstances, if you then believe that you are the cause of all your bad circumstances. So you end up in this cycle of self-blame and shame. And then it can also be bad because it can lead to victim blaming. So blaming people who are in negative situations and circumstances, saying that they have attracted those circumstances themselves. So there really can be a lack of empathy there, and again, blaming people for their situations. And another related problem that stems from the idea that we attract everything into our lives is that it can cause people to become afraid of negative emotions, because they believe that if they experience any negative emotions, then that is going to manifest into bad circumstances. Now, this is of course not good because it leads people to not deal with their emotions properly. They might suppress or repress them, or they might escape them by watching TV, for example, or doing something more detrimental like resorting to alcohol or drugs. And this is of course not healthy because negative emotions are a completely natural part of life. It is natural to experience negative emotions in reaction to certain circumstances. And when I say negative, I don't mean that they're negative in the sense that they're inherently bad. I mean negative in the sense that they feel bad. They're not very pleasant to experience. But there isn't actually anything wrong with them. All we need to do is actually learn to process them properly. So the fact that the law of attraction can sometimes lead to fear of negative emotions is another problem. So I think these concerns that I've just talked about are very valid concerns, but I do think they stem from a very extreme interpretation of the law of attraction. So in this video, I want to talk about why I believe this view of manifestation is illogical, and why I think there is room to acknowledge that we can use manifestation to influence our physical circumstances, whilst also acknowledging that not everything we experience is a result of manifestation or is our fault. So firstly, why do I think it's illogical to suggest that everything we experience in life is a result of us manifesting it? Now, to demonstrate this point, I want to use the example of babies being born into not very nice circumstances. So of course we can imagine a whole range of circumstances here. We can imagine babies being born into a war environment, into poverty, or being born to abusive parents. In all of these cases, these are children or babies who have literally just been born into those circumstances. So in my opinion, it is completely illogical to suggest that those babies have attracted those situations to them. Now, this is an extreme example, but I think it really demonstrates the point of how it's illogical to assume that everything we experience in our life is a result of us attracting it. And of course we can have a conversation about certain spiritual viewpoints. A lot of people who hold spiritual views believe that the things we experience in this life was something that we chose to experience for whatever reason. Maybe we wanted to overcome some challenge. And this is something that I do tend to believe myself. There is actually a certain challenge that I'm experiencing in life that maybe I'll talk about in one video someday, but I do find comfort in believing that this particular challenge was maybe something that I chose to experience in this life. But of course, I don't know whether that's true. There's no way that I can prove that either way or not. So I think viewpoints such as that are completely irrelevant when it comes to this discussion of manifestation and whether or not we have actually attracted something whilst being in this life. And then here's another example that doesn't just relate to babies, and this isn't a very nice example, but of course all of us in life will experience losing loved ones. Maybe we'll lose them to some accident, or they'll have some illness or something, or it'll just be natural, which is what we of course hope for. But this is something we experience in our life. It's one of our life circumstances, and again I think it's completely illogical to assume that that is something that we have manifested or attracted. So in my opinion, it makes no sense to say that every single thing we experience in our life is something that we have attracted through manifestation. To me, it makes much more sense to say that our lives are the result of a multitude of different factors. To me, this is much more intuitive, and it seems to match how most things work in life. So let me give you an example. If we look at our health, for instance, our physical health is not just determined by one factor, it's determined by many factors. So those factors might be our genetics, our diet is determined by whether or not we do exercise. It's also determined by the environment we live in, so whether or not there are any environmental toxins, for example. And then it is also determined by our mind. So we have the placebo effect, which is very well established in medicine. The placebo effect demonstrates that our mind and our beliefs can actually influence our physical health. So when it comes to our health, yes, our mind does play a role, but it is not the only factor influencing our health. That being said, I do believe actually that our mind can override some of the other factors if we really believe something strongly enough. I think that, for example, if we have a really bad diet and yet we have really strong beliefs of health, then maybe we can override that through the placebo effect or manifestation. But that still doesn't change the fact that there are many different factors which play into our health. It's not a matter of just one influence. So with that in mind, I think it makes much more sense to assume that our lives are the result of multiple different factors that are influencing it. One of them being manifestation or the law of attraction, but there are also other factors such as chance. So when it comes to this idea that the law of attraction can be detrimental because it suggests that anything bad that happens to you is your fault, I think that this issue stems from taking very polarized views. I feel like a lot of people either take the view that if the law of attraction is real, then that means that absolutely everything in your life is something that you've manifested or attracted. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have the other extreme, and that is that our mind and our thoughts have no influence on our reality whatsoever. I think both of these views are too extreme, and I think we need to take a more nuanced view in the middle. To me, it seems obvious that we don't manifest every single situation in our lives, but at the same time, it's not satisfactory to say that our mind and our thoughts have no effect on reality. We don't even need to go as far as manifestation to recognise the impact that our thoughts and our beliefs have on our life. If we look at the neuroscience that correlates to manifestation, we can see how our thoughts and our beliefs can actually change our entire perception of reality. So in that sense, through shifting our thoughts and our beliefs, we do actually begin to experience a new reality. And I've already talked about the placebo effect, which shows the power of our mind in influencing our physical body and physical health. So clearly we have to recognise that the mind does have some power when it comes to influencing our reality. And I do think it is more than just neuroscience and the placebo effect, as I will mention later on in the video. So if we don't manifest everything in our lives, then what is my view of the law of attraction? So the way that I see the law of attraction is like a ship sailing on the ocean. In this analogy, the ship and the direction of the ship represent our life and the direction that our life is going in. Now, the direction of that ship is influenced by many different factors. One of those factors is, of course, the ocean and the waves on the ocean. So I see the ocean as all of the different external factors which have an influence on our life, such as chance. And where the law of attraction comes into this is the captain of the ship and the sail. So I see manifestation as the captain of that ship turning the sail to influence the direction of the ship. It may have all these other influences acting on it, but we can still turn the direction of the ship through turning the sail, or in manifestation terms, through changing our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions to manifest a different result into our reality. So I think this analogy is powerful because it lets us acknowledge that the law of attraction can have some influence in our life without being the cause of absolutely everything we experience, because there are also other factors at play. So if we acknowledge this, we can acknowledge that not everything you experience in your life is your fault, even if the law of attraction is real. If a baby is born into poverty or war, for example, that isn't something that they've manifested. Now, I'm not saying that you can never attract anything negative into your life. At the end of the day, manifestation is all about selecting a particular desire that we want to realize and feeding it energy by rewiring our thoughts to be in alignment with it, making sure our beliefs are in alignment within it, cultivating the emotions that are in alignment with it. So it's all about feeding energy into something. And of course, we can unintentionally do that to negative things as well and feed energy to those and eventually manifest those into our life. However, I think it helps no one and makes no sense to assume that anything negative you experience in your life is a result of you manifesting it, because I just don't think that is true, especially when there are so many other factors that might be influencing your life. And I don't believe that this more nuanced view has to take the magic out of manifestation. Whilst I do believe that a lot of the law of attraction can be explained by neuroscience, I do think that there is actually more to it than that. I definitely think that there is a potential that our consciousness can actually influence physical reality. I've already talked about the placebo effect, which is evidence that our mind can influence our physical body, but I do think there is the potential that it can go further than this and actually influence our physical reality that is external to us. There is some evidence that consciousness might be able to influence physical systems. You can look at the Global Consciousness Project, for example, that has found correlations between random number generators placed all over the globe. They found correlations between the output of those and certain events like tragedies or celebrations which unite very big numbers of people and put them in a similar conscious state. So for example, if it's a tragedy, obviously people's consciousness is going to be united in a negative state. People are going to be in panic and upset. Whereas if it's a celebration, then people's consciousness is going to be united in a happy state, in a positive state. Whatever the event is, they've found that these different events which unite huge numbers of people in their experience of consciousness correlate to the outputs of random number generators. And so one explanation of this is that consciousness might actually have an effect on our material reality. And if it is true, if our mind can affect physical reality, this doesn't mean that everything in our reality is a result of our mind or our consciousness. Again, it all comes down to nuance. So all in all, I think these issues with manifestation really come down to people taking two extreme interpretations of the law of attraction. I definitely think there is room to acknowledge that our mind is extremely powerful and it can exert an influence on our physical reality, whether it be through neuroscience or the placebo effect, or actually having an effect on physical reality itself. But there's also room to acknowledge that that doesn't mean that everything in our reality is something that we've attracted. So if you're someone who was initially drawn to the law of attraction, but have found yourself struggling with it because maybe you're struggling with self-blame from experiencing some negative circumstances, I hope this video can offer you some comfort and you can recognise that not everything is a result of you manifesting, but still recognise that you do have some power in shifting your reality. Now, if you want to understand how this might work from a scientific perspective, then I will link a video here that goes really in depth into how the law of attraction is linked to science. So thank you so much for watching this video and I hope to see you in the next one.